All right. The Book of Job, chapters 22, 23, and 24. Oh, Cat wins. Cat wins. If you're watching this later, we have a Discord. There's a link to the Discord pinned in the live chat. There's also a link to the Discord in the description of the video. It is free. It will always be free. Just a nice group of people who think deeper than probably you. But if not you, then it'd probably be a good place to be. David. Evening fam, looking forward to being with all of you tonight and hearing world-class reading, zany comments, and cat punnery. I love each one of you. Hey, Esmil. Oh my gosh. So Tuesday we are doing not psychology. What am I talking about? We're doing philosophy, right? Yeah, philosophy. We didn't finish what we did last week. So we will be finishing that. Not Tuesday. Monday. The topic discussion is Mondays now. And why is that not there? There it is. Okay. Yeah, Monday, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central Time. We will be continuing with some of the metaphysical philosophy, psychopathy. Some of that for sure in there. I think it's a fair descriptor for some of what we have talked about. But we'll get back in there. Free will was one of the big topics this past week. That was really interesting. Great points were brought up, things that really made me think. So there will certainly be more of that tomorrow, because the topics are on Mondays now. So tomorrow at 7 p.m. We're going to continue on that. Tonight is the Book of Job 22, 23, and 24. It should not take that long. A lot of the same, however, we do finally break out of one of these patterns in this text. So there will be a little bit new and different. Thank God. Job is no problem if you read it all at once, because what has been for us, 5 weeks, 6 weeks of these conversations back and forth between Job and his friends is 20 minutes when you're reading it. Like by yourself, maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour if you're a slow reader. But then it moves on. Whereas for us, it just seems like every week we're just continuing in this thing. I'll be returning on Tuesday night. Love you guys. Oh, Ghost, we'll miss you tomorrow. Unfortunate, but glad you got family stuff going on. That's good. That is good stuff. Tampa, I put the invite out if you want it, just so we don't have to do it later. Oh man, I made a killer pun earlier today, but unfortunately it is not rated for the general public. I think I know what you're talking about, and I would agree that it's not rated for the general public. That is a fair assessment, I would say. So chapter 22, Eliphaz speaks, Job's wickedness is great. Brief reminder. Essentially what has happened over the past 10 chapters is Job saying he's innocent, Job pleading with God, and Job flipping and flopping on whether God knows what's going on and will hear him if he just had the chance to express it to him, if he just had his day in court to explain that he's innocent. Flipping from that to God is evil, basically. God knows he's innocent. God is punishing him regardless. And then the friends are just being pretty consistently terrible. However, they theologically flip and flop a little bit too. Oh, good. Ghost will be here for philosophy. Thank God. Yeah, tomorrow. Monday night at 7 p.m. And thank God Kat reminded me, because I was still thinking Tuesday as well. But I hope you're having fun with the family, man. Then Eliphaz, the Temanite, reminder there is Teman, I think it's Teman, was a city in Edom that was regarded to be somewhere of wisdom. And the reason we think that is because in Jeremiah 49:7, we have a mention of it. And in that context, it paints a picture of that being the vibe of that area. Can a man be profitable to God? Surely he who is wise is profitable to himself. Is it any pleasure to the Almighty if you are in the right? Or is it gain to him if you make your ways blameless? So let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so in verse 3, and this has come up a number of times, but is it any pleasure to the Almighty? Is it any pleasure to Shaddai? Is what other translations will say. Eliphaz, again, wrongly, is making the claim or the argument that God has, he's got no weight or stake in Job's righteousness or in the vindication of Job in this context, this greater context of what's going on. He is unaware, obviously, of the prologue. He's unaware of what we know because we were there at the prologue. In chapter 1, 7-12, it said, the Lord said to Satan, from where have you come? Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down on it. And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil? That's when we got that beautiful picture painted of who Job actually was, or at the very least, who Job was to God. It's a very, very, very clear descriptor of who Job was to God. We got a similar thing in chapter 2, 2-6, where we get this depiction of who Job is, the upright and blameless man, quote unquote. Satan then argued that Job would curse God if and when God afflicted him or allowed affliction to befall on Job, which is now obviously what has happened so far in the story. God therefore does have a stake in Job's righteousness, in contrast to what Eliphaz is saying. He does have a stake in Job's righteousness. His righteousness will prove Satan is incorrect, was incorrect. And it's meant to disprove the prologue in a sense. Is not your evil abundant? There is no end to your iniquities. And again, this is Eliphaz speaking to Job. So it's continuing on the conversations. Is not your evil abundant? Aren't you an evil man, Job? There is no end to your iniquities. There's no end to your evil, and therefore there is no end to your punishment. And this is how I, with terrible theology, am making what is happening make sense. Text is not displayed here. Or what?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you, guys. There you go. Sorry, Bible study, I have to run all the software different because of the program that we use. So thank you. I heard StreamYard was free. StreamYard is terrible in my opinion, but it's probably just me. I know a lot of people use StreamYard. I also don't think it's free. I think they have a free version of it. StreamYard, from what I understand from people who are smarter than me, is not the greatest for what we do here. OBS is free, and OBS is pretty decent. I just suck. It's not the software's fault. It is just me. So thank you for pointing out. The text should be on the screen now. We should be good. It's verse 6. Hey, Leon. Verse 6. For you have exacted pledges of your brothers for nothing, and stripped the naked of their clothing. I want to read this. Taking a pledge was a way of taking collateral for debt. So that's what's being referenced in 6. For you have exacted pledges of your brothers for nothing, and stripped the naked of their clothing. Taking of a pledge was a way of taking collateral in a debt concept. The law in Deuteronomy 24 would prohibit a pledge that would damage the debtor's ability to make a living. Deuteronomy 24:6 gives us that law. It required those who took clothing as a pledge to return it by nightfall. This is one of these weird laws that made sense for them and makes no sense to people in the modern day. You also had in Exodus 22:26, where it said, part of it said, if you ever take your neighbor's cloak in pledge, you shall return it to him before the sun goes down. So in both Deuteronomy and Exodus, we have a law regarding exactly that. And now it's being referenced here in Job. So Eliphaz is accusing Job of exploiting the poor by taking pledges for no reason. That's the claim. You have exacted pledges of your brothers for nothing, and stripped the naked of their clothing. And it goes on in 7, you have given no water to the weary to drink. So now he's trying to further charge him in this context of those with less. because Job was a wealthy man. He was a well-to-do man. So now you've given no water to the weary, thus questioning Job's compassion or love for people, accusing him of withholding life, essentially, by water and food from those who had less, from the poor, which was a terrible, despicable thing then, and is still a terrible, despicable thing now. Job has already refuted this, and then he will refute it again in plain English in chapter 31. Eliphaz continues and says, and you have withheld bread from the hungry. Continuing on with that theme. The man with power possessed the land, and the favored man lived in it. You have sent widows away empty, and the arms of the fatherless were crushed. So continuing on this, you are a terrible person, Job, specifically in the context of the weakest and neediest among us, accusing Job of ignoring the law having to do with the pledges, which would, another part of the law, would require the wealthy to protect those with less. It required in Exodus 22 and Deuteronomy 10. The wealthy would be required to protect and take care of something like the widows, of which Eliphaz is using here. Therefore, snares are all around you, and sudden terror overwhelms you, or darkness, so that you cannot see, and a flood of water covers you. Is not God high in the heavens? See the highest stars, how lofty they are. So as the response to what Job had said, that God allows the wicked to prosper. That was the last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess, since we skipped last week. Job had gone into great detail on how basically what happened was the friends said that only wicked things happen to wicked people. And then Job's response was, well, that's not true. We see this, this, and this. We see good things happen to wicked people, and we see nothing bad happen to many wicked people. And so this is a continuation of that. So Job had claimed that God does allow wicked people to prosper. And here Eliphaz is praising the greatness of God, still in contrast to what is reality, which is that wicked people do prosper in many contexts. Tenacious what? Hey, Mikkel. Have you noticed when you read a powerful passage and then you look at the verse number or chapter number and that number has a biblical meaning sometimes and they relate? Do you mean numerology? Just so I understand for sure what you're saying. I think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people connect dots also that maybe don't mean anything. I believe not in coincidence, but I believe certain things happen just happenstance. And I don't think everything has some rich meaning. But if you mean numerology, then I won't argue it, but I'm not a numerology guy. I think oftentimes that stuff does happen. I'm just very cynical. But I'm sure, as usual, I'm in the minority with that. Verse 13. But you say, what does God know? Can he judge through the deep darkness? Thick clouds veil him so that he does not see, and he walks on the vault of heaven. Will you keep to the old way that wicked men have trod? They were snatched away before their time. Their foundation was washed away. Real quick. Let me see. I had pulled something here. Okay, no, we'll come back to this. So 13 again was, but you say, what does God know? Can he judge through the deep darkness? Now the friend, Job's great friend, is accusing Job of poor theology. He's saying that Job is putting a limitation on God. He's putting God in a box, so to speak. He thinks that Job is claiming, by him claiming, that the wicked prosper, which was what we read a couple weeks ago. He's also making the theological claim that God is limited or not complete. Because if you look at the term that was used here, and then it's used again, I think, in the next chapter as well, but limited or complete is in the Hebrew in 13. It's not here in the English. The next chapter, they will have an English translation for it that they lack here. But the way this would cross the bridge would be God is limited or God is unlimited. God is complete or God is incomplete. And the friend is accusing Job of having the theological idea that God is incomplete and that God has limitations on him. Joffrey says 7 living waters of purification, a very rudimentary form of neurology with me. I don't get what you mean. 7 in this text? That was, you have given no water to the weary to drink, and you have withheld bread from the hungry. Living water. Explain more. Explain more. Because I think this is pretty cut and dry. I don't know if there's a spiritual aspect to it, personally. But that's just me. This seems very obviously about literal water. Unless we're like adding a spiritual implication. I'd be curious to hear more from you on that. What are you extrapolating there? 14. The clouds veil him so that he does not see, and he walks on the vault of heaven. Will you keep to the old way that wicked men have trod? They were snatched away before their time. Their foundation was washed away. Eliphaz is now making another claim. He's making an argument that Job is on this path of the wicked. He's been wicked. This is obvious to the friends because of what has befallen him, which then will take him to the end of the path, which is utter destruction, biblically and culturally for these people. So that is their assumption of what will happen to Job. Their foundation will be washed away, though the foundation of the wicked, even though Job has kind of put that to rest, because the foundation of many wicked people that were obviously within the realm or the culture of these people here were doing just fine. And Job tried to point that out, and everybody so far has completely ignored it. They said to God, depart from us, and what can the Almighty do to us? Yet he filled their house with good things. But the counsel of the wicked is far from me. The righteous see it and are glad. The innocent one mocks at them, saying, surely our adversaries are cut off, and what they left, the fire has consumed. He's describing the reaction of the righteous to what is destruction of the wicked. What should be destruction of the wicked. Job has accused all of these people, all of his friends, as being cruel and not understanding, and essentially being wicked themselves in a certain sense. Not in the same sense that they're calling him wicked, though. When a chicken gets sick in... Hold on. When a chicken gets sick in a chicken coop, the other chickens surround him and peck him. Not unlike Job's friends and modern-day churches. Is that true? So, I know a lot of animals obviously do that, where if one of them falls sick or gets injured, they'll, take its life, and oftentimes will eat them. I didn't know that about chickens. I guess that makes a lot of sense, though. Please put that on a Hallmark card. Do they end the life of the sick chicken, or do they just kind of mess with it? Either way, it's brutal. It's brutal. 21. Agree with God and be at peace. Thereby, good will come to you. Receive instruction from his mouth and lay up his words in your heart. So giving the same advice they've given the whole time, which is repent. Repent, admit what you've done wrong, and ask for forgiveness, and you will stop being punished. If you return to the Almighty, you will be built up. If you remove injustice from your tents, if you lay gold in the dust, and gold of Ophir among the stones of the torrent bed. This is interesting because it's interesting on its face, and then it's interesting in the next couple of chapters because reference is made to this section. If you lay gold in the dust. If you remember in Job 22:23, he had said, if you return to the Almighty, you will be built up. If you remove injustice from your tents, we have this verse right here. Then, in 24, if you lay up gold in the dust, the gold of Ophir among the stones of the torrent beds, Job would have to abandon his wealth, is essentially what's being said, which is interesting if you consider we know what happened in the prologue. We know what was actually talked about, and we know what is actually happening. The friends don't, so they just continue to trip over themselves and look ignorant and have terrible theology. But now it's moved past morality. Job, you're evil. Job, you don't care about the widows and the poor, and you're not giving water to those who need them. It's also that you have money. If you lay up the gold in the dust, if you give up your wealth, then all will be well. Eliphaz is attributing Job's wealth to him being unjust, to his morality, which is just contextually not true. You could make a bigger picture argument for it, but contextually it's not true. Then also, Ophir is a region known for very fine gold. Isaiah 13:12 says, I will make people more rare than fine gold, the mankind than the gold of Ophir. Its exact location, like most things, is not known. It is an unknown location, but it is thought to have been located in the southern Arabian Peninsula on the Red Sea. Solomon had imported gold from Ophir. In 1 Kings 9:26-28, we get a reference for Solomon importing gold from this territory. Cat, bring me the snakes. Oh, they do. David said, yes, peck him until he expires. It's not surprising. Chickens are a different animal, man. Lizards were known for being androgynous in Hermeticism and the Greek magical potpourri. What was that in context to? Did Cat make a lizard comment? I must have missed it. 25. Then the Almighty will be your gold and your precious silver. So give up your wealth. It's a part of what makes you evil. And if you give up the wealth, then God will become your wealth. He will become your gold. For then you will delight in yourself. You will delight yourself in the Almighty and lift up your face to God. You will make your prayer to him and he will hear you, and you will pray your vows. So if you give up your wealth on top of stop being evil in all the ways that we have described, then you'll be able to lift up your face to God. Then you'll be able to pray to him, and then God will actually hear your prayers. You will decide on a matter and it will be established for you, and light will shine on your ways. Everything will be better. Everything will be mended. Everything will be all right if you just admit that you are evil. For when they are humbled, you say, it is because of pride, but he saves the lowly. He delivers even the one who is not innocent, who will be delivered through the cleanness of your hands. It's worth noting that the friends are getting more aggressive. The friends are becoming a little bit more blunt, and the friends are starting to become a little bit more dramatic in what they're accusing Job of and how they're explaining it. Because now, in the beginning, it was many like general claims about Job. Well, you must be doing something, Job, because nobody suffers like this other than a wicked man. And now it's become very specific. Oh, you're not giving water to those who need. Oh, you're not taking care of the widows and you are wealthy. Oh, it's because you're wealthy in general that you are evil. You have to renounce and abandon your wealth. It's becoming more specific. They're charging him with specific things now. 23. You can eat snakes, but the lizards look suspiciously like rocks. What did I miss? Maybe you should do an episode on that, biblical lizards. Some snakes look suspiciously like leaves, branches, rocks, etc. Unfortunately, that's how most people get bites. Kat, what were those snakes that were at WDC that were in the tank? They were water, and they legitimately looked like branches, but they were not. They were snakes. What were those? Do you remember? Those are the type that would have got me. Because, man, did they look like just sticks. Or like politicians. Tentacle snakes. Okay. Okay. 23. Job now replies. And they have aptly titled this, Where is God? Then Job answered and said, Today also my complaint is bitter. My hand is heavy on account of my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat. I would lay my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know what he would answer me and understand what he would say to me. Would he contend with me in the greatness of his power? Different vibe from Job. I know it's hard to keep track because of how much space is in between when we read this, but I review before we do this. Different vibe. The end of 6 there. I guess all of 6. Would he contend with me in the greatness of his power? No, he would pay attention to me. That's a shift for Job, because the last we had him, and he's flip-flopped, but the last we had of Job was God would pay no attention to me. God does not know I exist other than to do evil to me, to punish me for something I did not do. Here, he's saying he would pay attention to me. So previously, Job made pretty bold claims that even if God answered him, he would not listen to his arguments. He's got no interest in hearing Job's case for his innocence. Now he's saying that he will. Now he's saying that he has some degree of confidence that God would give him, within the context of the courtroom, it would give him a fair trial. It's interesting to see the emotions of a human cycle like this. They're an upright man there. An upright man could argue with him, and I would be acquitted forever by my judge. He's very positive right now about this whole situation. He has not been. Not been. Behold, I go forward, and he is not there, and backward, but I do not perceive him. On the left hand, when he is working, I do not behold him. He turns to the right hand, but I do not see him. But he knows the way that I will take. When he has tried me, I shall come out as gold. And there's a beautiful literary reference to the previous chapter here. So a handful of things with this. But he knows the way that I will take. There's a lot there, theologically and otherwise. But Job, in 8 and 9, he's saying no matter what he does, he can't find God. No matter where he goes, no matter what he tries to do, he cannot see him. He can't perceive him. But he believes still that God knows him. In 10, but he knows the way that I will take. He obviously, from the beginning of this chapter, has some degree of confidence that God not only knows him, knows his heart, knows that he's not wicked, and knows that his friends are wrong. There is that degree of confidence there. When he has tried me, I shall come out as gold. This gets interesting too. So Job acknowledges that his current suffering is a test. When he has tried me, I shall come out as gold. I will come out renewed. But he understands here, at least, that there's a test. Or at least he's in an emotional state currently where he thinks this is a test, which is a beautiful thing because we know that it's a test. As people who were there during the prologue, this would parallel the prologue, where that entire opening scene that I already read from the last chapter is setting up the whole and great context of the test. That it's meant to possibly develop the character of Job, both in the literature, but also to some degree in actuality, and proves God right, is what it is. It doesn't make people feel good, but that's kind of a huge part of the story. Is Satan said, God, he will reject you if you take what he has. God's like, nuh-uh. And Satan's like, yeah, huh? And God's like, fine, do it. Let's see. And so that's the story. It doesn't feel good when you break it down like that. But a part of it is the vindication of God through one of, if not his greatest, human character. It doesn't feel good, but it's part of the story, and you kind of have to admit it. So he knows he's being tried. He knows that it's a test. I shall come out as gold. I just love this part because in that previous speech, Eliphaz had told Job to put away his wealth, to give away the wealth. And then Job is now kind of snapping back at it, and I just like that. Eliphaz had said that God should be your gold. Get rid of your actual wealth, get rid of the gold, and then let the Almighty become your gold. Job, however, knows that there will be a day of vindication because he knows that this is a test, and he will come out like gold once he's been purified by fire. It's just kind of literary. It's a literary beauty within the story. Frenemies. Copperhead almost got me at 5 years old in a stack of firewood. Dang. Kat said, yeah, those guys are rad. For those who don't know, they stick their heads out of water. Stay still, look like a twig, and look nothing like a snake. Or any animal for that matter. What, the copperhead? Are they the ones who hold their mouth open all weird? I don't recall. Verse 11. Oh, okay, the tentacle snake. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, those guys are funny looking, but they legitimately look like a twig. My foot has held fast to his steps. I have kept his way and have not turned aside. I have not departed from the commandment of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my portion of food. But he is unchanged, and who can turn back? What he desires, that he does. For he will complete what he appoints for me, and many such things are in his mind. But he is unchanged. Who can turn him back? But he is unchanged. But he alone is. Job's making the recognition that God is what God is. And that it's kind of interesting, actually. There's a deep theological rabbit hole here, but the idea that Job's kind of putting forth is that God does what God wants to do, and that human interaction cannot change the mind or the direction of God. Now, it's not to say anything about free will. The idea still, at least that's supported by the stories, that humans have free will. That's supported by the whole Bible, in my opinion. But is that humans still have the ability to be free agents and act upon our choice and free will. But what he's saying here is that humans don't so much have the ability or capability to change God's mind. So there's a difference between God passively allowing humans to engage and be free agents of their free will. There's a difference between that and God deciding something is so and allowing that to happen. There's a distinction, in my opinion. But this would parallel one of the primary faith statements for the Jews. In Deuteronomy 6:4, it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." And what's missing in the English here is he is unchangeable. What it should say, arguably, is he is one, or he alone would be, in my understanding, would be better translations. And the English here is poor, because this makes other connections to Jewish law. And in English, it's saying, but he is unchangeable. It makes no connection to Jewish law. And I believe that should be there. Wild Bill Rivers. What's up, man? Copperheads are one of the most beautiful homicide hoses out there. Cottonmouths are the open mouth guys. Yeah, well, I guess that's why they're called cottonmouths, right? Keep your mouth open all day, you're going to have cottonmouth. Contrary to what most people believe, is that they eat a lot of a certain type of plant. But that's not true. Then it said in 13, the other half, 13b, is who can turn him back? So he is unchangeable. Arguably what it should say is he is one, or he alone is. But the back half of that, who can turn him back? The Hebrew term shav, S-H-A-V, is often used to describe God turning away from his anger. So in 2 Kings 23, we get it in that context. In Jonah 3:9, we get it in that context. Here, Job's making the recognition that no one, including him, Job, could force God to turn away from his will, his dedicated will, God's choice. He is unchangeable. He is one. He is unmoving. We can't change God's mind. Job accepts that he must endure the affliction. How long? As long as God wants to, which, interestingly enough, is exactly right. In the story, at least, theologically, you could argue about, but in the story, it'll be over when God decides it's over, because this was started, like it or not, by God. God did not have to prove to Satan that Job would stay by his side, that Job would continue to be faithful through all this trial and, just awful in every possible way. Your family dying, you becoming sick, you becoming frail, your friends hating you. Like, as far as human life goes, it doesn't get much worse than what happened to Job. So in that direct context, Job will endure until God decides otherwise, because God decided that Job will endure to begin with. Just kind of is what it is. What he desires that he does, for he will complete what he appoints for me, and many such things are in his mind. Therefore, I am terrified at his presence. When I consider, I am in dread of him. Interesting thing here is some of the English versions will make 15 the beginning. Therefore, I am terrified at his presence. They will make this seem as though this is the kind of reverence, a reverent fear. My understanding from the Hebrew is that is not true. The Hebrew seems to indicate dismay and terror, actually, horror. In Judges 20:41, we get it in a very specific context, and it is not reverent fear of God. In Isaiah 13:8, we get it in a very specific context, and it is also not reverent fear of God. It is horror. It is horror, it is fear, it is being terrified. It is not the same term used for fearing God. It is a different term, which is an important distinction. God has made my heart faint. The Almighty has terrified me, yet I am not silenced because of the darkness, nor because thick darkness covers my face. That is the end of 23. Wild Bill said, Job is a good and faithful servant. Why make him go through hell to prove it? Yeah, that's kind of the question, right? And I think you can take a couple different of angles at it. You got the angle of, well, none of this happened at all. It's meant to express a story and some principles. One of those being that because of our human nature, we don't have the capacity to understand what is going on beyond the veil. And so the story could very well be, at least in part, meant to express and get the audience to understand that in our human capacity, our understanding is limited. And so what happens here may not always make sense. But just like in the story, the prologue makes it so the whole rest of the story, us as the readers, know what's going on. And so we feel better about it because we know the purpose, we know why it's happening, we know that there's this cosmic warfare going on. Whereas Job's just like, what the is going on? What did I do? He's losing his mind. That would depict pretty well to the reader, to the audience, that you're ignorant. We are ignorant to what is actually going on, and to be aware that we are ignorant. If the story is literally true, God help me, I have no idea what that's meant to teach you. While those said bad things happen to good people, I get that harsh story though, for sure. It's an interesting story because it teaches a lot, and some of it I think is negative, and some of it is certainly positive, but not all of it is, in my opinion. You're left as a Christian with many theological cliffhangers of how are we actually meant to think about the problem of evil. We got some ideas from the text. Some things were made clear, but I think a lot more questions were posed as well. It's tough. It's a tough story. Whether you read it on its face or whether you read it theologically. I think either way, it's pretty tough. Esmail said it could be a way to try to deal with their defeat by the Babylonians. Exile and the destruction of their temple around 500 BCE. I mean, it could be, for sure. It could be. I don't know if I'd be in that camp, but I definitely get what you're saying. I think it's a fair idea. Mikkel said, thing is, in my opinion, Job needed the spanking. Job needed spanking. God wanted to teach his beloved just a lesson. Job suffered from misconceptions about God's character. The key is in Job 1:5. We all suffer from it. I think it's certainly a part. I think it's honestly, my opinion is that it's very multifaceted. I think there's too much here for us to be like, this is what the book of Job is about. I think it's applicable to so many different things in context, without us being those obnoxious people who pull everything out of context and try to make it make sense in whatever situation we're talking about. I think it's truly applicable contextually, exegetically, to many, many different things, because it's a theologically and principle dense text. There is so much that is happening, from interpersonal communication with relationships between friends, even a spouse in there, from the general problem of evil to the cosmic realm and what is going on beyond the veil. Like, there are so many things that are contextually legitimate to exegetically try to apply to other things. I think it's complex. I think it's very complex. But that's a good point, Mikkel. I agree with that. I think it's certainly in part. All right, we're beautiful on time. So 24, Job 24. Why are not the times of judgment kept by the Almighty? And why do those who know him never see his days? I want to read this for 24. Why are not times of judgment kept by the Almighty? This, Job's basically, it's a lament that the wicked are not judged in what is to come in the following verses. This idea would parallel Job's question prior that echoed the author of Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes 8:11, it says, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. I'm gonna read that one more time, because contextually it's important and it's interesting. Because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, because the negative consequence of the evil deeds we do are not executed on us as consequences fast, because of that, the heart of children of people is fully set to do evil. This is kind of Job's point in the previous chapters, where what the friends are saying about where all the friends were saying that only bad things happen to bad people. Nobody who is pure and upright, which ironically is how God described Job in the prologue. Again, what we know and the friends did not know. But anybody who is wicked will reap wicked consequences. Job then kind of snapped back that, what about all these people that we know who are wicked and suffer no consequences? And the friends have not been able to answer it yet. Ecclesiastes has a very similar principle. Because the consequences of evil are not executed or given to us as consequences fast, because of that reality, we have a tendency to continue to do evil because we don't suffer that consequence right away. And this is what Job was trying to express to his friends, is that the wicked don't experience consequences for their wickedness, and therefore those men are fully set to continue doing evil. But more in direct context with here, why are not times of judgment? Some translations add the of judgment part. This does not appear in the original manuscripts. Why are not times kept by the Almighty? Of judgment is a later addition. This results in the rendering that we have, which is what you see. not the times of judgment. To make it more contextually congruent with Ecclesiastes 8:11. But just always going to point it out. It does not exist in the original text. Job, this continually? That went over my head. David, you are right, Mikkel. Romans 3:23, NIV, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. I mean, for sure. It's a for sure theme of, I mean, all of Scripture, whether it be the Jewish Scripture or the Christian Scripture. It's all got there. Common theme. All right, so time of judgment was added later, not in the original text. Verse 2. Some move landmarks. They seize flocks and pasture them. They drive away the donkey of the fatherless. They take the widow's ox for a pledge. They thrust the poor off the road. The poor of the earth all hide themselves. Quite a bit there too. And 2, some move landmarks. Some translations will say they remove border stones. Both work. But what's happening was they would move literally the lines of the map. Like in Google Maps, if I could move the border line of Colorado further into one state, that's what's happening here. They would move the borders, which was an illegal way to steal property in this culture. It was also something that was prohibited by law in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 19, Deuteronomy 27, and it's also mentioned in Proverbs 23. So that's what's being referenced there. Then at the end of 4, it said, they thrust the poor off the road. The poor of the earth all hide themselves. Job's saying here that the oppression of those poor, the poor of the earth all hide themselves. The oppression of the poor is concrete evidence that God's judgment is delayed at best. If not, it's concrete evidence that God's judgment does not come, which is also what Ecclesiastes says, is that the consequence is too slow, and therefore man will keep being evil. So continuing on with that theme, behold, like wild donkeys in the desert, the poor go out to their toil, seeking gain. The wasteland yields food for their children. They gather their fodder in the field, and they glean the vineyard of the wicked man. Not only do the poor have a difficult life that is predominantly labor intensive, but their labor does not benefit them in many cases. Not in all, but in many cases. Their labor in general benefits, in this context, the wicked people, which is kind of Job's point, because he had been accused of not taking care of the poor and not taking care of the widows. And so now he's responding to all of that. They lie all night naked, without clothing, and have no covering in the cold. They are wet with the rain of the mountains and cling to the rock for lack of shelter. There are those who snatch the fatherless child from the breast, and they take a pledge against the poor. In verse 3, it said, they drive away the donkey of the fatherless. They take the widow's ox for a pledge. Here, the wicked are seizing the livestock of the poor. I'm sorry, previously, they were seizing the livestock of the poor. Here, they're now seizing the children of the poor. So he's taking it further. They go about naked without clothing, hungry. They carry the sheaves. Among the olive rows of the wicked, they make oil. They tread the winepress, but suffer thirst. So the 3 products, you have bread from the sheaves, you've got oil, and you've got wine. All 3 of them were viewed in Deuteronomy and Jeremiah as blessings from God. So those who had them in abundance, who had them to great degrees, would be happy and would be fulfilled and would be considered to be blessed. And those who did not, in general, would not. From out of the city, the dying groan, and the soul of the wounded cries for help. Yet God charges no one with wrong, making the point that though there is so much oppression going on, you, my friends, as you're trying to accuse me of doing, the oppressing, that I am suffering the consequences of all my wickedness. There is actual oppression going on, and God does not seem to care. How do we know? Well, he's explaining right now. All of this wickedness goes on. All of this happens. The wicked get away with what they do. They get away with theft. They get away with oppression. They get away with treating workers poorly. They get away with making the poor stay poor. They get away with leaving the hungry hungry. They get away with all of these things. And God does not seem to care by the same standard that his friends are accusing him of being judged by God. God does not seem to judge others by that same standard, if that were true. There are those who rebel against the light who are not acquainted with its ways and do not stay in its paths. Those who rebel against the light. I thought this was interesting. So it says, Job describes the actions of the wicked in terms of light. Here, they figuratively rebel against the light. If you compare these here to Psalm 97, light is sown for the righteous, the joy for the upright in heart. And then Proverbs 2:13 says, who forsake the paths of the uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness. In Job 24:14-17, darkness is a tool the wicked use to hide their wickedness from both people and God. Are you all done? Oh, you have a snake.
Mikhail requested.
Oh, you gotta slide her in more. Esmil said, we all like sheep have gone astray, and God has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Isaiah 53:6. Wild Bill. I love these deep dives. Iron sharpens iron, and you give me a deeper understanding of the word. Thank you. You're welcome. Well, glad you're here. We do this all week. Almost. Yeah, you gotta slide in here. If anybody is offended by snakes, you may have to look away for 10 seconds. If you are not, then good deal. Okay. So 14, the murderer rises before it is light, that he may kill the poor and needy. And in the night, he is like a thief. The eye of the adulterer also waits for the twilight, saying, no eye will see me. And he veils his face. So he's just continuing to point out these inconsistencies in the theological perspective of the friends. The murderer rises before its light, that he may kill the poor and needy. He's blatantly just pointing out wicked, and these people do not experience it. They do not experience consequences the way that his friends say he is experiencing consequences based on his wickedness. He's taking it all further. The adulterer, the murderer, these people all get away with their wickedness and do not suffer consequences. So how do I, Job, suffer consequences for wickedness I don't even know I'm doing? I'm not aware that I have. In the dark, they dig through houses. By day, they shut themselves up. They do not know the light. For deep darkness is morning to all of them, for they are friends with the terrors of deep darkness. Oh, we got bounced. Hold on. There we go. 18. You say, swift are they on the face of the waters. Their portion is cursed in the land. No treader turns toward their vineyard. Drought and heat snatch away the snow waters. So does Sheol those who have sinned. The womb forgets them. The worm finds them sweet. They are no longer remembered. So wickedness is broken like a tree. They wrong the barren, childless women, and do not do good to the widow. These are all the things that his friends had accused him of. So he's spitting them all back one by one. And he's one-upping them in most scenarios. So the womb forgets them. The worm finds them sweet. They are no longer remembered. So wickedness is broken like a tree. They wrong the barren, childless woman and do not do good to the widow. These were things he was accused of doing. Yet God prolongs the life of the mighty by his power. They rise up when they despair of life. This thing keeps bouncing me around. They rise up when they despair of life. He gives them security and they are supported. And his eyes are upon their ways. They are exalted a little while and then are gone. They are brought low and gathered up like all others. They are cut off like the head of grain. What is going on here? Hold on.
Good adventures.
There you go. There you go. They are exalted a little while and then are gone. They are brought low and gathered up like all others. They are cut off like the heads of grain. If it is not so, who will prove me a liar and show that there is nothing in what I say? So he snaps back pretty hard with this one. But still nothing is new. So next week will be in 25. Bildad now jumps in. And over the next 2-3 weeks, we finally shift out of this back and forth. So we'll see. Tomorrow, we are continuing the philosophy thing. So let me get that real quick. What was Tuesday night is now Monday night for the topic discussion. How can I do this? Oh no, oh no. Okay. Hold on. There we go. So Tuesday, Monday night. We did philosophy 2 weeks ago. We did philosophy last Monday. And now we're continuing metaphysics and philosophy tomorrow on Monday at 7 p.m. Central Time. If you're in the Discord, just use the events thing. Because every once in a while we have to change times or change days. But now what we're doing is Sunday night at 6 p.m. We're doing Monday night at 7 p.m. Thursday night at 6 p.m. and Saturday night at 7 p.m. So different times and different YouTube channels. Tomorrow will not be on this YouTube channel. Tomorrow will be on this YouTube channel at Tattoo Theist, because we are able to speak more freely there. So last we talked about free will for the most part, but there were some other things tossed in there too. And we're going to continue that and then go into some of the other interesting topics within metaphysics and philosophy and early theology, really. So that'll be tomorrow, Monday night, and every Monday moving forward. Next week, we'll post a poll for what the topic will be. We've just kind of been rolling on this topic for the past few weeks. Thursday, we're still in the Book of Giants and Enoch. Saturday, we'll be starting the Apocrypha of John, which is good. Interesting stuff. Non-canonical, obviously. And then next Sunday, we'll be back for the Book of Job. Geoffrey said, that's why Genesis 1, verse 3 and 4 is where Elohim, I assume is what that was supposed to say, separates the darkness from the light. That is the distinction between the Trinity and Satan. Why do you say that? Or do you just mean in general the Trinity? I guess, how about this? That is the distinction between God and Satan. Would you agree with that, or do you specifically need it to say the Trinity? Just out of curiosity. David said, I'm honored to announce it's time to subscribe and like, lest you forget and begin your week tomorrow with regret. With regret. You're the man, David. Truth Unfiltered YouTube. Just joined your Discord, brother. Look forward to chatting with you. Well, good to have you. Yeah, good to have you. Hopefully you're on the lives moving forward. As requested, a medium well snake for Mikkel. Got it.
Asked if he wanted small, medium, or large, and he said medium well.
Coven, we missed you, Coven. You skipped us. Your channel will go much bigger when you defeat us witches on your live channel. We found and heard you after helping save a woman from hell before her judgment. That sounds very nice of you. Aren't witches supposed to not be nice? Oh, I did miss something from you earlier. Coven said, congratulations, largest traditional witchcraft coven in the world has come to this channel. We were drawn to this channel. We came, keep talking. We love warm skin, breath on us. Hi, missed you. We missed you too, my friend. Or friends, plural, I think it is. Mikkel said the philosophy, heretical witchcraft, Gnostic coven. That should be the next channel's name. The philosophical, heretical, witchcraft, Gnostic coven, to directly compete with the spirits coven. looks so gorgeous on Joe's neck. She's a nice snake.
She's the best.
She's a nice girl. She is a nice girl. Yeah, no microphone. We have enough. We have enough problems. Can't wait to rewatch and see what I missed. Was it a good one tonight, guys? I mean, it's more of the same, I guess. There'd be a few things worth looking at, but I'm sure you know most of this stuff. Job is Job, man. I think the interesting thing is the theological conversation at the end. Is what's the purpose of the book? What was it actually written for? What are some of the theological implications of it? All of that I find interesting. You could read through the chapters we did in 10 minutes to be caught back up. I want her to get stuck into things. Would you like to give a Wednesday to talk to witches? Subscribe, let's make you big. I don't know what you mean. Would you like to give a Wednesday to talk to witches? Are you, is this an interview? Am I being interviewed on Wednesday? I'll come talk. But to be honest, I'm not sure I want witches to come over here. So we could do it secretly and privately. I'm not concerned about getting big. I'd be doing a lot of things different if I wanted to be big. Geoffrey said, to me, the first 3 verses are the divine trinity out of Genesis, by the way. And verse 4 is where the darkness is separated from the third emanation of the Trinity, which would be pre-existent Christ, the eternal light, the Son. Interesting. Yeah, see, I assumed based on some things you've said in the past that that's where you're going. That's why I specifically asked, would you say the same thing with God, or does it need to be the Trinity? It's interesting. I don't agree, but it's interesting. And I'd say probably most Christians do agree with you. So as usual, I am in the minority. Will Bill, I would tune into that. The interview between me and the witches. Do we want to do a witch interview? I mean, I'll do it. I'll do it, I suppose. Esmil said, we can do the Mesopotamian witchcraft series on the Philosophy, Heretical Witchcraft, Gnostic Coven channel. Yeah, Coven, why don't we talk offline? I saw you had Twitter. So if you find me on Twitter, send me a message and maybe we could do something together. And maybe something that has to do with witchcraft. Who knows? Who knows? We could do it. We could do, like Esmil said, we could do the Mesopotamian witchcraft series on a new shared between the witches and the Christians YouTube channel called Philosophy, Heretical Witch Game, Gnostic Coven. I think they're good ideas. The people here have great ideas. Mikkel's continually coming up with great channel ideas. I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy. I wish I was. It's time to go, ladies. Yes. It is. It's time to go. Gotta do some work. Gotta go to bed. All right. Anything else? Last stuff. Tomorrow night, philosophy, metaphysics, free will, and other mind-bending questions, 7 o'clock Central Time on the other YouTube channel. So let me do my part, I suppose. No, that's not going to work, is it? That is the channel on YouTube where tomorrow night's conversation will be. Wild Bill, if you're around, we'd love to see you again. But philosophy, metaphysics, free will, and other fun stuff like that. Thursday, Book of Giants, Enoch. Saturday, Apocrypha of John. Sunday, back to Job. Mikkel said, Job offered up burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. Gotcha. Okay, I get the reference now. Yeah. He was doing that continually, like it says, just out of fear that his kids might be sinning. That's it. Which is it went to continue on the description of Job being this upright and blameless man. So blameless that he was burning offerings just in case, not because he had actually done anything. Joffrey said, "You're right. Most Christians do agree with me on that third verse. It's the second verse where I'm considered a heretic." Right. That's right. That's right. I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember. That's true. So we're all heretics. That's why we all get along. That's why we all get along. I hope someday we get you to go in Discord so I can get a detailed description of that whole deal. Because myself and Ghost, at least, all right, and I'm sure Mikkel too, are very curious for more of that. Coven said, if you join us, you will need to support us in defeating Islam and atheism. We aren't after you. We see the light in you. Why are we trying to defeat Islam and atheism? And can we just be like, no BS for a second? Is this a debate, or is this like goofy defeat them? Just so I'm clear, but I'm down. I am game for this. Either way, I suppose, whether it's a goofy defeat or an actual intellectual debate. Ghost said, "We are all heretics." Joffrey, yes, that is this group in a nutshell. Job is so worried about his children. He was. And then his children were expired. And why? And that's a part of why the text is interesting. It's trying to justify the why. Why? Just because God got called out?
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Is this were children expired because God was prideful and got called out on the schoolyard by the main kid and felt like he had to prove the main kid wrong? Those are the parts of Job that are actually interesting to me. Wild Bill said, yeah, he burned offerings for his kid's sin, just like we pray for our children, trying to intercede on their behalf. Right. But in the greater context, I think that depiction served a specific purpose, because it was kind of the wrapping up of the blameless and upright man, where God gave a very long description of who Job was. And the whole purpose was to paint this idea of a guy who was unwavering, to set the stage for Satan to be like, no, even the best of the best will curse you if bad things happen to them. Because of the hedge of protection, he will not curse you. If you pull that away, he will curse you. And then we went through this period of, okay, don't touch him. Okay, don't kill him. Where God increasingly allowed Satan to do more, because Satan increasingly told him, if I do more, he will eventually curse you. It's really immature if you actually break it all down. What was going on between Satan and God was like a school argument of nuh-uh, yeah, huh. That just seems like it kind of got out of hand and people got killed. And with that, I love y'all. I'm going to go. I got to do some work and we got to go to bed. And this was fun. Ghost said, that helpless feeling of watching your young adult or adult kid make the wrong choices. Yeah, great way to put it. We love the... Coven, if you reach out to me on Twitter, because I know you have a page because I saw it. Reach out to me there. We'll chat. I love you guys. Have a good night. Bill, Wild Bill, it was good to have you. Hope you come back. Love you guys. See you tomorrow night.